Deep in the heart of Cambodia lies a lake that breathes with the seasons, expanding and contracting like a living entity. This is Tonle Sap, the beating heart of Khmer civilization and a source of life for over 1,000 years. But beneath its serene surface, the water hides something else, something older. Local legends speak of a forgotten city swallowed by the lake long ago, ruled by priest kings and guarded by ghostly white crocodiles. Fishermen whisper of stone steps beneath the mud, of statues glimpsed in the deep, and strange lights moving below the surface. For centuries, the tale has drifted across the waters, half memory, half myth. But what if the city of the white crocodile was real? And what if the only reason we haven't found it is because we've been looking in the wrong place? Across the centuries, the story of the white crocodile was kept alive, not in history books, but in whispers, transmitted through oral tales, ancient chants, and encoded temple murals. In the villages that cling to the edges of Tonle Sap, elders speak of a time before Angkor, before Jayavarman, and the empire that ruled Southeast Asia. A time when another city stood as the spiritual center of a people lost to history. That city, they say, was ruled by sages who could speak to animals, call rain with drums, and commune with crocodiles believed to be their ancestors. The most sacred among them was the white crocodile, a divine creature said to possess knowledge of the stars and the underworld. According to the legend, the creature did not just protect the city, it was the city. The very shape of Bore Sathukar, if the name is to be trusted, mirrored the form of the sacred crocodile, its temples laid out like spine plates, its canals the ribs. Rituals were performed on moonless nights at the center of its back, where a crystal obelisk was said to pulse with light when touched by water. What makes this legend unique is its persistence. Unlike typical myth cycles that fragment over time, the tale of the white crocodile has remained consistent across various Khmer dialects, even reaching into the tribal lore of indigenous Bunong and Tampuan groups who live far from the lake's shore. The same elements recur: a sacred city, white crocodiles, and a flood that erases but does not destroy. Some versions say the city was buried to protect it from invaders, others that it vanished when its rulers grew arrogant and defied the gods. This consistency has drawn the attention of linguistic anthropologists and mythographers, many of whom now believe the story may encode real historical memory. But until recently, no evidence existed to suggest where this mythical city might be. Then came the carvings, hidden in plain sight. Deep inside several Angkorian temples, including lesser-known sites like Ban Tie Chma and Preah Khan Kompong Svai, are curious bas-reliefs that do not align with mainstream Khmer iconography. Among them, crocodiles with elongated skulls, often depicted beside stilted cities being engulfed by waves. These images were dismissed as symbolic, until LiDAR and satellite imaging began uncovering strange geometric anomalies beneath the flooded forests near the southern shore of Tonle Sap. Suddenly, the myths seemed to align with the ground. An international team of researchers, including Cambodian archaeologists and French epigraphers, began cross-referencing ancient maps, Chinese maritime records, and local oral traditions. What emerged was a hypothesis: a lost hydraulic city built entirely on elevated platforms, canals, and floating foundations, likely submerged around the 8th or 9th century CE. Not erased, but hidden in time. If true, the lost city of the white crocodile wouldn't just predate Angkor, it could be its prototype, a sacred experiment in engineering, religion, and astronomy, all guarded by the very creature its memory rests upon. And yet, no one has yet confirmed it. Only ghostly outlines from above, fragments pulled from riverbeds, and the growing chorus of those who believe the crocodile is not a monster from legend, but a symbol of something very real, waiting to be rediscovered. For centuries, Cambodia's lowland forest concealed their secrets well. The density of jungle, the flooding of plains, and the long shadow of the Khmer Empire masked what lay beneath. But in 2012, that began to change. A plane equipped with LiDAR, light detection and ranging, flew over the tangled landscape around Phnom Kulen and the greater Angkor region. What it revealed was astounding: a vast network of temples, canals, and engineered landscapes, some older than Angkor Wat itself. But to the south, near the swollen belly of Tonle Sap, the scans picked up something stranger. Beneath the flooded forest south of the Prek Toll biosphere, LiDAR revealed grid-like anomalies, perfectly straight lines, concentric ovals, and rectangular foundations that made no sense in a natural context. The shapes were obscured by thick mangroves and periodically submerged, but their alignment was precise, matching cardinal directions in a way typical of Khmer ceremonial planning. The largest structure appeared crocodilian in shape, nearly 800 meters from snout to tail, surrounded by what looked like curved embankments and segmented channels. Could this be Borei Sathukar, or at least the city that inspired the myth? Field expeditions struggled to confirm the shapes on the ground. Mud swallowed boots. GPS signals failed under the canopy, but fragments began to surface. Clay tiles not used in post-Angkorian construction, sandstone blocks etched with symbols not found in existing Khmer inscriptions, and most damning, broken ceramic crocodile effigies buried beneath meters of silt. Still, these finds were fragmentary. The deeper parts of the structures, those beneath the waterline, remained elusive. During the dry season, teams launched longboats and drones using sonar and aerial photogrammetry to map the submerged formations. What they discovered was haunting. Stone platforms under the water, aligned in near-perfect grid formations, connected by what looked like ancient lock systems or sluices. An entire city apparently engineered to rise and fall with the flood. Unlike Angkor, which rose on terra firma, this place had adapted itself to the lake. It didn't resist the water. It lived with it. Some archaeologists proposed it was a form of proto-urban aquitecture, a civilization of amphibious engineering that may have influenced the later Khmer hydraulic cities. Others speculated it may have served as a spiritual gateway, a place where the material and mythic worlds blurred, a floating city dedicated to the realm of ancestors and beasts. The crocodile shape, once thought metaphorical, now seemed terrifyingly literal. It was a city that looked like its protector, or perhaps a city built as its protector. But such ideas were controversial. The Cambodian government, mindful of cultural sensitivities and land disputes, was slow to officially recognize the site. Meanwhile, researchers had to race the seasons. Each monsoon threatened to erase another trace, and lurking beneath it all was the question no scan could answer. Why was it buried? Was it a collapse, a flood, a curse? The deeper the teams dug, the more they uncovered of a civilization not erased by war or neglect, but by deliberate design. A city meant to vanish, remembered only in legend, and in the echoing shape of a crocodile sleeping beneath the water. In the lowlands of Cambodia, water is not merely an element, it is a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Each year, the Tonle Sap River performs a miracle, reversing its flow and flooding the lake five-fold in size. It brings fish, fertile silt, and life. But it also takes. Crops vanish, homes are lifted, and the past disappears beneath its surface. For most civilizations, such floods were disasters. But what if, for one lost city, they were the plan? Among the more disturbing theories emerging from Borei Sathukar's rediscovery is that its submersion wasn't accidental, it was intentional. Archaeological simulations now suggest that the city was built to interact with the lake's pulse. Sluices, canals, and artificial embankments weren't just for transport, they were clocks of water. They regulated time, season, and ritual, and when the time came, they opened, letting the city sink beneath the sacred tide. Researchers studying sediment layers in the suspected city grid found evidence of gradual abandonment. There are no signs of sudden destruction, no fire, no war. Instead, the signs are ritualistic. Offerings buried in thresholds, statues toppled and gently covered with sand, a city that sealed itself like a tomb. But why? One answer lies in the ancient Khmer belief in Niktar, spirit guardians who inhabit natural features, including rivers, rocks, and especially crocodiles. These spirits must be appeased. Some texts written in Pali and inscribed on palm leaves refer to ceremonies known as the sinking of the seat, a rite in which an entire temple or sacred precinct was surrendered to the elements. It was not an act of destruction, but of preservation through return. In this context, the city's submersion might have been an offering, a sacrifice to the white crocodile deity to ensure balance between the spirit world and the living. A way of locking away dangerous knowledge, a corrupted priesthood, or a holy power too volatile for human hands. The legend that the city defied the gods may not be a warning, it may be a veil for something more nuanced. A chosen vanishing. And the evidence grows. Divers working in tandem with sonar teams found unusual stone pillars carved with iconography rarely seen in Angkorian temples, fish-bodied monks, serpent-wrapped staircases, and depictions of crocodiles with human eyes. One slab shows a group of robed figures kneeling before a massive crocodile with flames in its belly, interpreted by some as a record of the final ritual. Some even suggest the city was designed to become a myth, that its vanishing was the point. A message to the future, written not in ink but in water and silence. In this view, Borre Sathukar was not lost, it was buried alive with intent, not out of fear, but out of reverence. To be remembered not as a place to be visited, but as a place to be believed in. As we continue to dig into the mud and memory of Tonle Sap, we are forced to ask, what happens when a civilization chooses to vanish, to hide itself beneath its own sacred flood? And what secrets were they protecting that were worth sealing in the depths? As excavation teams combed the muddy gridlines of Borre Sathukar's possible remains, they began recovering more than just shaped stone and waterlogged wood. From beneath layers of compacted silt and alluvium came artifacts that defied the expected. Pottery shards, yes, but with unfamiliar motifs, not the lotus blooms or dancing apsaras common to Angkor-era temples, but spirals, serpents and crocodilian forms repeated obsessively. One item in particular sparked international attention. A terracotta figure of a crocodile, about 30 centimeters long, was discovered half-buried near what appeared to be a ceremonial platform. Unlike typical Khmer animal depictions, stylized, ornamental, this figure was anatomical, almost biological in precision. Its back was adorned with miniature carvings resembling stilt houses, suggesting it represented not just a creature, but a city form, a sacred city-crocodile hybrid. Teeth of inlaid gold suggested the item held ceremonial importance, perhaps used in a ritual involving light or fire. Equally strange were the ceramics marked with a language no one could read. Etchings that looked almost like script, but not the curvilinear Old Khmer used in temple inscriptions. Linguists speculated it might be an older proto-writing system, or a symbolic ritual code meant only for the initiated. When photographed and compared against neighbouring cultures' iconographies, such as Dvaravati, Mon, and ancient Funan, none offered a clear match. These weren't trade items, they weren't imported, they were local, and yet they didn't fit. The implications are staggering. Could Borre Sathukar represent a parallel civilization, one that developed in tandem with the early Khmer, but followed a wholly different religious or aesthetic path? A cultural fork in the jungle that was later swallowed by both water and empire. Some artifacts suggest a knowledge of celestial alignment unusual for the region. Clay tiles decorated with star patterns match no known Khmer cosmology, but do appear to correspond with the Pleiades and Sirius, stars worshipped in ancient Indian and Chaldean traditions. One theory posits that the city may have hosted a priestly class with roots deeper than the Angkor kings, or possibly exiled astronomers and spiritualists from early Indianized kingdoms seeking refuge in the lake's maze. Equally perplexing are the miniature tablets, thin slices of fired clay, bearing crocodile footprints etched alongside what appear to be moon phase symbols. Several of these were discovered arranged in a circle, as if part of a lunar calendar or ritual map. When placed together, they resemble the layout of the city itself, suggesting a cosmogram, a sacred map encoded in object, space, and story. If this city was a ritual machine, then these artifacts were its dials, its sacred user interface. Each item a clue to how its builders interacted with their gods, their environment, and perhaps their own myth of extinction. And the most haunting realization? These objects were meant to be found. Their placement suggests deliberate burial, not scattered by flood or war, but carefully deposited in precise alignments, as if the lost civilization knew it would vanish and wanted someone to know it had lived. And so, beneath the weight of centuries and silence, the city speaks again. Through clay, through carvings, and through the impossible footprints of crocodiles pressed in fired earth. In the shallows near Tonle Sap, archaeologists stumbled upon a series of carved stones, flat, rectangular slabs partially buried beneath layers of algae and peat. At first glance, they resembled boundary markers, perhaps remnants of an old Angkorian canal system. But as the mud was cleaned away, strange symbols emerged, glyphs not matching any known Khmer script. Not Brahmi, not Pallava, nor Sanskrit. They were angular, almost geometric, as if etched by hand but meant to be unreadable. For weeks they were catalogued in silence, no public announcement made. The research team feared misinterpretation, or worse, exploitation by relic hunters. But the local villagers had seen them before. Older fishermen warned the archaeologists not to disturb the stones that whisper. According to oral tradition, those who tried to dig up the marsh stones would be plagued by dreams, visions of crocodiles with human eyes staring from firelit waters. One account from the 1940s told of a French colonial officer who removed one of the stones and shipped it to Phnom Penh. His transport boat capsized under clear skies. Survivors swore they heard drumming beneath the water before the boat flipped. These stories were dismissed, of course, but they had an impact. The archaeological team installed motion-activated cameras near the stones and left them untouched for several weeks. What the footage showed was more curious than ominous. At night, small animals, monkeys, birds, even otters seemed to pause at the stones. Some sniffed. Others sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the carvings before leaving. It was behavior difficult to explain. Were the stones giving off some scent, or was it just a strange coincidence of animal curiosity? A joint expedition from Japan and Cambodia performed non-invasive scanning of one stone. Ground-penetrating radar revealed something chilling. The stone wasn't a standalone artifact. It was the capstone of a buried chamber, only partially accessible. The chamber measured 6 meters across and was lined with more slabs. Inside were faint echoes, as if hollow. When hydrophones were lowered, they captured low-frequency vibrations, steady rhythmic pulses like distant drumming. And then came the turning point. One stone, lifted during the dry season for cleaning, revealed a second layer of carvings beneath the first, this time in a recognizable pre-Angkorian script. Translated, it read, "We buried our name in silence, let none awaken it." Historians were stunned. The inscription suggested a deliberate cultural erasure, an attempt not just to hide a city but to obliterate its identity. Who does that? And why? One hypothesis proposed that Bore Sathakar, if it existed, wasn't destroyed by war or conquest. It was hidden by its own people. Perhaps in fear of a supernatural reckoning, or out of shame, or even as part of a ritual pact. The white crocodile, once seen as guardian, may have become a symbol of punishment, its name associated with divine betrayal. Visual evidence continued to mount. Underwater divers located 3 more submerged capstones in the same region, all forming a triangular grid. Beneath one, faint traces of red pigment were found. Ochre symbols shaped like eyes, still intact after centuries. These weren't just markers. They were warnings. Back at the lab, acoustic engineers analysed the drumming pulses. While likely caused by underground water movement or geological shifts, the pattern was undeniably rhythmic. 12 beats followed by 3 short echoes. It matched ritual drumming patterns recorded in Cambodian highland tribes that still venerate crocodile spirits. This convergence of archaeology, myth, and environmental phenomena blurred the line between science and legend. The question loomed: if this city erased itself, what secret was so terrible it had to be buried beneath water, stone, and silence? And more pressingly, should it be unearthed at all? In 2007, a team of Cambodian researchers examining pre-Angkorian population movements stumbled upon a series of anomalies in the oral histories of highland tribes in Ratanakiri province, far from the marshes of Tonle Sap. Among the Kreung and Tampuan elders, Stories persisted of pale river kings who once ruled a city of mirrors and fire, but were cursed and driven westward by angry gods. This might have been dismissed as metaphor if not for the artifacts. Bronze medallions, rice urns, and bone flutes bearing identical motifs to those found in the marsh ruins. More stunning were the linguistic fingerprints. Embedded in the Krong dialect were over a dozen archaic words that didn't match any Mon Khmer origin, terms for crocodile, flood, silence, and exile. Linguists noted these words had structural resemblance to extinct languages found only in inscriptions around Angkor Boré, hundreds of miles away. Had a population once fled from Boré Sathukar, carrying fragments of a lost tongue with them? A comparative genetic study deepened the mystery. DNA samples from 3 highland groups showed a surprisingly high affinity with ancient samples recovered from burials near the marsh ruins. These groups, long isolated, bore mitochondrial markers tracing back to a shared maternal lineage, one that seemed to vanish from the lowlands after the 5th century. It was as if an entire bloodline had been erased from the center and pushed to the margins. What would force a civilization to scatter its people so completely? A Buddhist historian from Batam Bang suggested a chilling hypothesis. Boré Sathukar may not have fallen in war or drought, but through a self-imposed exile. A sacred code passed through generations forbade any return to the city's heart. This was mirrored in a Krong ritual, still practiced, where community elders whisper oaths into jars of river water before burying them in the forest. The act, they say, is meant to keep the path closed. But what were they keeping out, or in? Geophysical records show that around 430 CE, a sudden climate fluctuation caused Tonle Sap's water levels to swell by over 3 meters, enough to drown entire settlements. Sediment layers reveal rapid flooding followed by long-term stagnation, the kind that kills crops and festers disease. If Boré Sathukar had stood at the edge of the lake, the flood would have turned its temples into tombs. Survivors, fearing contamination, could have deemed the city cursed, an infected relic never to be touched. This would explain the total absence of continuity in the region. Unlike Angkor or Sambor Prey Cook, where successive civilizations reused foundations, Boré Sathukar appears to have been deliberately erased from memory. No new city rose in its place. No empire reclaimed it. It was not conquered. It was abandoned with intention, but there's more. In 2023, anthropologists documenting refugee patterns in ancient texts found a peculiar Sanskrit inscription from southern Vietnam dating to the 6th century. It speaks of a white-robed people who came from the drowned forest, bearing no name and offering silent gifts. The gifts were medicinal herbs, crocodile carvings, and funerary masks. It seems the refugees didn't just vanish. They integrated silently into new societies, refusing to speak of their origin. To outsiders, they were ghostly pilgrims from a forgotten land. But among themselves, they maintained the rites. Night singing, symbolic crocodile dances, and cryptic carvings etched on rice paddles passed from mother to daughter. These fragments, scattered across geography and generations, suggest Boré Sathukar may not have died. It transformed, its people turning into whispers, its culture becoming taboo, its memory locked behind generations of ritual silence. A city unremembered by choice, a people who vanished themselves. As the 21st century progressed, the mystery of Boré Sathukar refused to remain buried. With satellite imaging, LiDAR surveys, and underwater drones, the supposed dead zone of Cambodia's Tonle Sap marshlands began to give up new secrets. In 2021, a drone-mounted infrared sensor detected a perfectly circular thermal anomaly beneath the surface of a brackish lagoon, an area avoided even by local fishermen. Weeks later, divers uncovered a submerged causeway leading to what appeared to be a vast circular platform, 80 meters wide, paved with polished black stones that didn't match any known local geology. Then came the audio. While monitoring sonar for wildlife, a research team from Kyoto University picked up an unexplained rhythmic clicking beneath the platform. Initially thought to be crustaceans or snapping shrimp, the pulses were later analysed and found to follow a mathematically consistent beat, a Fibonacci sequence repeating every 34 minutes. No known animal makes this pattern. One researcher called it a metronome embedded in the earth. Was it geological, biological, or artificial? Curiosity turned to concern when two divers returned visibly shaken. One refused to re-enter the water. The other, a marine biologist, described seeing lightless reflections below, forms that mirrored her own movements but weren't shadows. Their footage was inconclusive, corrupted by static and inexplicable data loss. For a brief 9 seconds, the audio picked up a warbled female voice whispering something in Old Khmer. Don't wake it. Word spread fast. Spiritual leaders from nearby villages held ceremonies asking researchers to stop digging. One monk claimed that beneath the lagoon sat not just ruins, but a living echo, a sacred resonance from an age before human time. He warned that the white crocodile was not a symbol, but a keeper, coiled in the invisible layers of reality. The name Bore Sathukar took on a new meaning, not just a city, but a mechanism, a structure built to contain, not protect, not defend, but silence something, a spiritual machine disguised as a city. Was it religious technology, an ancient bioacoustic temple, or merely the fevered imaginings of men too desperate to explain what should have remained unknowable? But if this was just folklore, why did the strange events increase? In 2022, water levels in Tonle Sap began fluctuating wildly despite no major climate events. Whole sections of the lake emitted low-frequency hums detectable only through specialized hydrophones. Fishermen reported fish behaving erratically, swimming in endless circles, sometimes leaping out of the water to their deaths. One night, a pulse of bioluminescence bloomed over the circular platform, seen by dozens along the shoreline. It glowed for exactly 12 minutes, then vanished. That same week, a long submerged stone slab surfaced naturally after decades underwater. On its face, a deep etched relief of a crocodile devouring its own tail, surrounded by 8 concentric rings. The outermost ring was cracked. Within days, the slab sank again, disappearing beneath the silt as if it had never emerged. Some believe Bore Sathukar is awakening, others think it never sleeps. The Cambodian government, caught between scientific pressure and local superstition, quietly declared the area off-limits under a vague ecological protection order. Yet satellite images continue to show subtle disturbances, shifting shadows beneath the water, impossible straight lines, faint luminescent signatures that bloom and fade with no pattern. And there is the final enigma. In 2024, an amateur radio enthusiast scanning long-wave frequencies picked up a strange signal bouncing off the ionosphere. At first, it seemed like static, until software revealed a buried pattern, an audio spectrogram showing a shape unmistakable to those who've studied it. A crocodile, fanged, coiled in a circle, accompanied by 3 tones that matched ancient bronze tuning forks excavated near the original marsh ruins. It seems the lost city may not be lost, it may be transmitting. By 2025, the story of Bore Sathukar had spread beyond academia. A growing community of independent researchers, mythographers, and even ex-intelligence analysts began comparing it to anomalies worldwide. Strangely, many saw parallels, not in Southeast Asia, but on other continents. In the Amazon basin, among the flooded ruins near Brazil's Rio Negro, similar concentric layouts had been observed, some centered around depictions of serpentine creatures. In the swamps of Louisiana, Choctaw legends spoke of a drowned city ruled by white-scaled guardians beneath still water. Could Bore Sathukar have a global twin, or worse, multiple siblings? At first, the idea seemed outlandish, but an obscure manuscript in Paris's Bibliothèque Nationale de France may have changed everything. Penned in 1736 by a Jesuit missionary, it described a ruined Khmer star fortress, located far from Tonle Sap, deep in the uplands of eastern Laos. The missionary claimed it matched none of the Angkorian or Chenla styles. Instead, he described smooth black stone, circular bastions, and walls etched with looping crocodile symbols. He included coordinates. Inexplicably, the location is a blank spot on most modern maps, a forest no one has been able to chart. When a joint Lao-Cambodian team attempted to locate it in 2024, they reported equipment failures, magnetometer interference and dense forest cover unlike anything expected in the region. GPS systems flickered, mapping drones lost orientation mid-flight. One drone, however, transmitted a single frame before vanishing, a blurred image of a dark circular mound rising above mist, with something white draped over its peak, possibly a statue. The team turned back, unnerved. This incident sparked new theories. Bure Sathukar may have been just one node in a network of lost sacred cities, each positioned near major hydrological systems, each buried in taboo, like acupuncture points across the earth, forming a forgotten grid. If true, the disappearance of one city could be related to the retreat or containment of an entire system, an ancient consciousness, spiritual or technological, that spanned continents. Back at Tonle Sap, the anomalous activity continued. Seismographs detected tremors not from tectonic shifts, but from deep, pulsing vibrations. Biologists recorded new species of bioluminescent plankton forming symmetrical spirals before dying in hours. Migratory birds refused to land near the lagoon, swerving violently mid-flight. The air itself carried a faint, low tone, inaudible to most, but painful to a few sensitive ears. Meanwhile, local accounts took a darker turn. Villagers began reporting dreams of drowning cities, of doors opening beneath the lake. Children woke with unexplainable markings on their palms, tiny loops resembling coiled crocodiles. A shaman from Prek Tol village claimed that the great sleeper beneath the city was stirring, awakened by the vibrations of curious minds. She warned that if Bore Sathukar was a lock, someone was twisting the key. Unbeknownst to the world, a private firm based in Singapore had been running LiDAR and sonar scans across Southeast Asia's dead zones. Their leaked report, shared anonymously in encrypted forums, contained a chilling map. It showed 5 major sites across Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam, each structured around circular voids or magnetic anomalies. At the center of the network, Tonle Sap, and at the base frequency of every location, the same rhythmic pulse, crocodilian, recursive, mathematical. By now, speculation spread into unsettling territory. Was Bore Sathukar not a city, but a kind of planetary failsafe? A regulator? And if so, what had it been regulated? If the drowned ruins were part of an ancient machine, or worse, a boundary, then the true danger was not the city itself, but what lay beyond it. What had the ancestors built to contain, and why was it failing? The final expedition to Bore Sathukar was never officially announced. No press release, no permits, just a blurry transmission intercepted by a network of global independent researchers. A multinational crew, operating under a private archaeological trust, entered the Tonle Sap wetlands in early 2025. They came equipped with low-frequency sonar arrays, magneto-tethered submersibles, and one directive: reach the central platform and descend. They called it Project Naga. For 2 days, nothing. Then, on the 3rd, a single encrypted audio file emerged from a dead drop server. Its contents were unassuming until filtered through a sonographic visualizer. A familiar symbol emerged, a circular crocodile eating its tail. Accompanying it were layered vocal tones in Khmer, Sanskrit, and an unidentified third language made only of vowel clusters and breathy intervals. Linguists called it a non-human phonetic sequence. Shamans called it a summoning. And then came the footage. Recovered days later through anonymous online drop, the final 13-minute video begins at dusk. A drone hovers over the central lagoon, panning slowly across the black platform. As the submersible descends, the waters shift colour, from brackish green to a deep indigo not seen in natural light. The lake seems to hum, not from the equipment, but from within. As the camera reaches 50 meters, ancient structures emerge, archways intact, inscriptions glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Then a chasm. A perfect circle bored into stone. Surrounding it are bas reliefs showing what appears to be human figures tethered to crocodilian entities by veins, not chains. Below the hole, darkness. Not just the absence of light, but a visible void, pixels strained to capture its depth. Timecode begins to distort. At minute 9, a new structure comes into view, a great obsidian gate with no hinges suspended in water, humming with resonance. On screen, a diver places their hand upon it. The moment their fingers make contact, the feed erupts with static. The last frame, an eye, slitted, white-scaled, peering through the gate as if it had been watching from the other side, waiting, and then nothing. No survivors were confirmed, no bodies found. The Cambodian government issued a statement declaring the lake a protected sacred ecosystem and banned all future expeditions. Yet something had changed. In the months following, strange events increased around Tonle Sap. Electronics failed within a 10-kilometre radius. Animals avoided the waters entirely. People reported time anomalies, short memory lapses, shared dreams, sudden illnesses when speaking of the site. Elders began to speak openly, warning that the gate was not just a portal but a mouth, and Bore Sathukar, the ancient city, was not a place of worship but of sacrifice, a pressure valve for something immense and ancient beneath the earth's skin. One myth now stands at the forefront of the local oral traditions, that of the white crocodile not as guardian but as prisoner. That long ago, a civilization built an entire city, not to honor it but to hold it. Layer by layer, with stone, sound and secrecy, they buried it under memory itself. And that city, Bore Sathukar, had been forgotten not by accident, but by design. But memory is water. It always finds a way back. Now, independent researchers warn of unusual tectonic hums echoing along Southeast Asia's river systems. Pulses synchronized with the same strange sequence discovered in the lake's sonar. Fibonacci, recursive, artificial. Some believe the city is no longer dormant, that something beneath it has begun to rise, not quickly, but inevitably. In the closing days of 2025, an unexpected burst of long-wave radio swept across the Indian Ocean, repeating only one phrase, scrambled but decipherable in Old Khmer. It was never a city, it was a seal. Beneath the warm Mediterranean sun, on the tiny island of Malta, lies a secret that defies time, technology, and even reality itself. At first glance, this limestone speck between Sicily and North Africa seems quiet. Its ancient walls and sleepy harbours whisper tales of Phoenicians, Romans, and Crusaders. But under the streets of Paola, in the middle of this peaceful landscape, is a doorway to something far older. A darkness carved by unknown hands thousands of years ago, the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. Locals used to say you could hear voices underground when the wind changed, chanting, humming, a language without words. For centuries they thought it was just old wells breathing in the heat. But in 1902, while workers were cutting cisterns for a new housing project, their tools struck hollow stone, then air, then a stairwell, and then silence so thick it made the men flee. What they found would become one of the most bizarre archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. A sprawling, 3-level subterranean complex carved entirely by hand, dating back over 6,000 years. Older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, and yet almost no one talks about it. The Hypogeum is no ordinary burial chamber. Its name simply means underground, but that doesn't capture its eerie perfection. Over 30 rooms, some with acoustics that rival modern concert halls, twist through the earth like the inside of a skull. One room, called the Oracle Chamber, can vibrate the human body at 111 hertz, a frequency linked with altered states of consciousness. Another, the main hall, has curved walls with no tool marks, yet was carved from solid limestone. This wasn't a cave, it was architecture, sculpted with purpose. But whose purpose? There's no record of the people who made it. No writing, no blueprints, no mythology handed down. Just bones, thousands of them, piled in chambers and alcoves as if waiting, as if arranged, some skulls elongated, some missing entirely, and some never publicly displayed again after the 1910s. The official reports call it a Neolithic temple, a burial site, a sacred space. But the layout doesn't match other known tombs, and the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Some chambers are acoustically alive, vibrating when you speak, Others are utterly silent, absorbing sound like foam. Why? Were they used for rituals, healing, or something else? Who knew how to carve in complete darkness, down 3 stories underground, with such anatomical precision in stone? These weren't primitive people hacking with rocks. These were engineers, or priests, or maybe something in between. Stranger still, the entire Hypogeum was almost forgotten. After its discovery, only a few decades passed before it was closed to the public. Conservation, they said. But rumours swirled. People went in and came out changed, or not at all. There are reports, buried in archival newspapers, of a school group disappearing during a visit in the 1940s. Officials denied it. But families never stopped asking. Some believe the Hypogeum isn't just a tomb, it's a machine, a resonant chamber designed to interact with the human mind, through sound, pressure, or something deeper, something not yet understood. And those who enter its lowest level, level 3, often describe the same dream after leaving, falling through red stone into a vast chamber, where something is watching. This is not just a mystery of archaeology, it's a challenge to everything we think we know about human prehistory, because whoever built the Hypogeum did so with skills we still don't fully understand, and then vanished, leaving behind no cities, no tools, no descendants, just an underground echo. Who built it? What did they want? And why does Malta, this tiny island, sit atop one of the densest concentrations of megalithic structures on Earth? The Hypogeum doesn't answer those questions, it only opens them wider. It began with an accident, a broken hammer, a hollow thud, and a layer of dust that refused to settle. In 1902, while labourers chiselled a water cistern foundation beneath a private home on Corradino Hill in Paola, Malta, they broke into a void so vast and silent it seemed impossible. At first, they were ordered to seal it and say nothing. The housing project was under contract. Time was money. But curiosity lingered, and word slipped out, quietly, as all truly strange things do. An amateur archaeologist, Emmanuel Magri, was summoned to the site. He entered through a crudely widened shaft and descended into darkness with lanterns and pencils, sketching what no one had expected. Beneath the house was not a cave, but a purpose-built complex carved from the living rock. No debris, no tool marks, no torch residue, nothing but cold stone and strange geometry. As Magri moved deeper, he found rooms of increasing complexity, curved walls, carefully proportioned columns, and strange niches with circular cutouts, as if designed for acoustics, or something else entirely. Over the next few years, the Maltese government took control. Archaeologists catalogued human remains, thousands of bones, mostly disarticulated, from at least 7,000 individuals. These weren't just burials. Many had been stacked, sorted, or arranged. But some of the most unusual findings, the elongated skulls, the undecorated chambers, and the possible signs of trauma, were never fully published. After Magri's death in 1907, his original notes vanished. His successor, Sir Themistocles Zamet, sanitized the reports. What emerged was a tourist-friendly description, a Neolithic burial site with impressive craftsmanship and spiritual significance. But visitors and researchers told a different story. They spoke of a strange energy in the walls, of disorientation and unease upon entering. The air was thick, almost sentient. The corridors seemed to shift. And then there was the acoustics, strange echoes that made your voice feel like it came from somewhere behind you. In the oracle room, even a low chant reverberated through bone and skin. It wasn't just sound, it was a vibration, designed for the body. As more levels were mapped, the full extent of the Hypogeum was revealed. 3 levels descending nearly 11 meters. The upper level was more typical: burial chambers, niches, and ledges. But the middle and lower levels were something else. The main hall of the middle tier featured a central apse with interlocking rooms, curved like the chambers of a seashell. Its architecture defied explanation. No modern symmetry, yet strangely harmonious. The third level, accessible only by rope or ladder, was pitch black and contained only water cisterns and storage pits. No human remains, no decoration, just silence. What made the discovery even more baffling was the total absence of surface settlement above. No village, no tool workshop, no signs of habitation. Whoever built the Hypogeum left no trace on the surface. They went down into the earth and carved a world within it, then disappeared. Carbon dating placed the structure around 3600 BCE, making it older than Egypt's Great Pyramid. But nothing else in Europe resembles it. Not in age, not in depth, not in intent. Many theories emerged. Some suggested the builders were a highly spiritual matriarchal society, based on figurines found nearby depicting seated female figures. Others proposed that the Hypogeum was a ritual death chamber, where the boundary between life and afterlife was navigated through sound and isolation. Yet the evidence was always incomplete. The early excavation reports, missing artifacts, and post-Webuwu renovations all complicated the truth. The most significant discoveries were made before modern preservation techniques, and many of the original bones are now missing. There's another layer to the mystery: the alignment. Researchers noticed that the Hypogeum's axes align with solstices and celestial events, just like the above-ground megalithic temples of Menasdra and Hagar-Chim. But how would an underground structure be aligned to the stars? Did the builders first construct a surface observatory, then carve beneath it? Or did they possess knowledge far beyond what Neolithic man is credited with? And there was something else, something mentioned only briefly in government archives. During the initial dig, the workers claimed they found a blocked passage, a narrow corridor sealed with stone that led even deeper. But before it could be explored, the area collapsed. It was never reopened. Rumours say it led to more chambers, or another Hypogeum, or something best left buried. From a broken pickaxe and a forgotten well shaft came one of the greatest enigmas in human history. The Hypogeum was not just discovered, it re-emerged, and in doing so, it raised more questions than it answered. The Hypogeum wasn't built overnight. It wasn't the work of chance or some accidental collapse of natural caverns. Every inch of stone was carved, shaped, smoothed, and yet, no one knows who did it. No records, no legends, not even folk stories passed down through generations. Malta's Neolithic culture, the so-called temple people, left behind no written language. Their only monuments are the megalithic structures themselves, massive stone temples above ground, and the Hypogeum far below. These builders emerged, thrived, and vanished, but their architecture still whispers their secrets. Archaeologists have tried to reconstruct the identity of these people through what little evidence remains. Carbon dating places the earliest use of the Hypogeum around 4000 BCE, likely beginning as a surface sanctuary and expanding underground over centuries. They were seafaring people, arriving in Malta from Sicily or southern Italy. They farmed, raised livestock, and built temples aligned with solar and lunar cycles. But then their behaviour diverged from any other Neolithic group in Europe. Instead of building upward, they went inward, digging down deeper into the earth. This descent wasn't random. The Hypogeum's plan is deliberate: spirals, ellipses, blind corridors, and sudden turns that disorient and confuse. It's as if the builders intended to separate the visitor from the world above. Some scholars suggest this layout was symbolic, a spiritual journey mirroring death and rebirth, where deeper chambers represented stages of transformation. The further one descended, the closer to the divine, or the ancestral. But how did they achieve such precision? The stone is Globigerina limestone, soft when freshly cut but hardens over time. Still, without metal tools, wheels or pulleys, carving over 500 square meters of underground chambers would have taken generations. And yet, there's little evidence of tool marks. Some surfaces are polished to a sheen, others cut in smooth arcs that suggest not just labour but a knowledge of form and resonance. And then there are the acoustic properties. The oracle room, in particular, responds to human voices with unnerving intensity. A male voice at around 110 to 115 Hz, just below the average speaking tone, triggers a phenomenon known as acoustic resonance. The sound bounces and amplifies, filling the entire complex. Experiments by acoustic engineers and scientists from Princeton have shown that chanting in this room causes brain activity to shift in listeners. Theta waves increase. Subjects report altered consciousness, emotional intensity, even visions. Was this known to the builders? Did they design the space to trigger trance states or spiritual communication? If so, they were not simply primitive farmers. They were engineers of the mind, psychonauts, ritual specialists, and they were not alone. Across Malta, dozens of stone temples dot the landscape. Tarxian, Menajdra, Hagachim all share common elements, altars, curved architecture, and astronomical alignments. But only the Hypogeum delves underground. Only it interacts with the human body in such an intimate, invisible way. The identity of these builders becomes even murkier when we consider what was found buried with them. Figurines, some feminine, some ambiguous, often called fat ladies or sleeping priestesses. One, found in the Hypogeum, shows a woman reclining as if in death or deep meditation. Her face is serene, her body robust. She is neither goddess nor human, but something in between. Symbols of fertility, of rebirth, or depictions of beings remembered from dreams or visions triggered in the acoustic chamber. And then came the skulls. Among the thousands of human remains recovered, a subset displayed unusual cranial features, elongated, with abnormally developed occipital regions. While some argue these were the result of binding, others point to their natural morphology. Photos taken in the early 1900s show elongated skulls stored at the Valletta Museum. But by the mid-20th century, many of these skulls were removed from public view. Their current location is unknown. The museum cites reorganization and damage. Conspiracy theorists claim suppression. Were these individuals the elite, the priest class, or something else entirely? Visitors to the Hypogeum today often report a feeling of being watched in the deeper chambers, as if the builders never left, as if their presence still vibrates in the walls, waiting to be understood. They had no name, no cities, no war, just stone, sound, and the silence of the earth. Imagine walking into a space where your voice does not simply echo, it returns to you altered, distorted, amplified in your bones rather than your ears. This is the oracle room of the Hypogeum, a small chamber, unimpressive in appearance but acoustically engineered in ways that modern architects still struggle to replicate. Carved over 5,000 years ago, it possesses a unique quality. Sound emitted at certain frequencies reverberates throughout the entire complex, bouncing, growing, and warping in ways that feel otherworldly. You speak, and something ancient replies. At its core is a niche in the wall, about 2 meters above ground. Stand before it and speak at 110 Hz, the frequency of a deep male voice, and the effect begins. Visitors describe it as overwhelming, even unsettling. Your voice surrounds you, returns from behind, from below, from within. Researchers from Princeton's Consciousness Studies program conducted field experiments here in the early 2000s. Their findings confirmed that chanting at 110 Hz in the oracle room enhances brain activity in the right prefrontal cortex and induces meditative states. Volunteers reported vivid images, altered sense of time, and emotional arousal. Was this intentional? A spiritual technology lost to time? Acoustic engineers believe so. The oracle room's dimensions, the parabolic curve of its ceiling, the placement of the niche, create what's known as a Helmholtz resonator. This isn't accidental. It suggests an understanding of how sound interacts with space and human physiology. Not just hearing, but feeling. The Hypogeum becomes a living instrument, and the human voice is its bow. Each vibration triggers a response in the architecture, and in the visitor's mind. Ancient people, it turns out, may have known what science is only beginning to rediscover, that sound is not just heard, but experienced. In cultures across the ancient world, from Tibetan monks to Egyptian priests, chants and frequencies were used to guide consciousness. But the Hypogeum is unique. It was built for this purpose, underground, in silence, free of wind and surface noise, a perfect chamber for inner transformation. Then there's the physiological effect. Visitors report headaches, nausea, or euphoria. Some say they feel disoriented or experience déjà vu. One archaeologist in the 1930s fainted during a long exposure to the oracle room's resonance. Another claimed to see shadows moving in the corners of the chamber during low chanting. It's as if the room doesn't just echo, it watches, listens. The rest of the hypogeum appears acoustically dead by comparison. Only the oracle room amplifies in this precise way. This isolation hints that it was the ceremonial core of the complex, the initiatory gateway, a sonic veil between the world of the living and the domain of the dead. But what of the chant itself? Could there have been a specific frequency, a sacred tone passed down among priestly castes? The 110 Hz resonance has now become synonymous with the hypogeum, but others have detected peaks at 111 and 114 Hz, frequencies known to affect the limbic system, the part of the brain linked to emotion and memory. When played through modern equipment, these tones produce physical reactions, goosebumps, emotional release, even tears. This gives rise to the idea that the hypogeum may have functioned not merely as a tomb, but as an acoustic temple, a place where memory was preserved in vibration, where the dead were not mourned but communed with, and the oracle room, like the vocal cords of the earth, was the medium through which they could speak. Legends emerged in the 20th century of Maltese children entering the hypogeum and never returning. One tale told of a school group that vanished after wandering too far. Another claimed that a woman searching for her lost sister heard voices whispering beneath her feet days later. While these are likely folklore, they mirror an underlying truth. Sound can guide and misguide. In darkness, vibration becomes map and mirage. The oracle room remains closed to the public now. Only researchers and preservationists are granted access. Too many visitors became overwhelmed. Too many claimed they felt pulled by the sound, unable to distinguish internal thought from external echo. It's as if the chamber amplifies more than just voice. It amplifies intent. It holds memory, desire, perhaps even entities. As we deepen our understanding of ancient sound technology from the ringing stones of Africa to the singing caves of South America, the hypogeum remains the crown jewel. A Neolithic cathedral not of light but of tone. Its architects are long gone, but their voices, maybe, are not. By the time the hypogeum was rediscovered in 1902, it had already kept its secrets buried for thousands of years. When workers accidentally breached the upper level during a construction project, they were met not with empty space, but with an ossuary, a dense collection of human bones stacked and scattered, pressed into alcoves and chambers. Over 7,000 skeletons were eventually recorded, many of them positioned deliberately, others jumbled in piles. But it wasn't just the number that shocked the excavators, it was what the bones suggested. The majority of remains were found in the deeper levels, particularly in the main chamber and the so-called Holy of Holies, areas not easily accessible without knowledge of the complex's narrow passageways. This was not a place of casual burial. These were chosen dead. Bodies were placed with care, their skulls aligned in certain orientations, their limbs tucked in the fetal position, symbolizing perhaps a return to the womb of the earth. These burials spanned centuries, suggesting continuous ritual use over generations, but no two archaeologists fully agree on the purpose. Was the hypogeum a necropolis, a place where Malta's prehistoric society entombed their elite? Or was it a site of transformation, where the dead underwent a ritualistic passage watched over by living priests or shamans who entered periodically? Some even propose that the dead never left, that their remains acted as anchors, vessels through which the ancestors communicated, using the hypogeum's acoustic channels as a spiritual medium. Artifacts found alongside the bones complicate the story further. Red ochre stained the walls in swirling patterns, circles, spirals, and what some interpret as eyes. Pottery shards bearing geometric designs, stone beads, amulets, and figurines of sleeping women and horned beings. These weren't offerings for the dead, they were tools, symbols, perhaps even keys to the ritual language spoken in the darkness. The distribution of skeletons wasn't random. Certain chambers held a greater density of remains, especially those closest to the oracle room. Some skulls were isolated, placed on stone shelves or within hollows carved into the rock, possibly for veneration. One chamber was found to have an unusually high number of child remains. Were these sacrificial victims, a separate class of honoured dead, or a family lineage preserved in stone. And then there's what's missing. Many of the remains catalogued in early 20th century reports have since vanished. The National Museum of Archaeology in Valletta once displayed several elongated skulls and burial artifacts from the Hypogeum. Today, only a fraction remains. Researchers seeking access to the original bones are often met with red tape or redirected to limited reconstructions. What happened to the rest? Speculation thrives in the vacuum of silence. Some claim these bones were hidden due to their anomalous features, particularly the elongated skulls. Theories range from intentional cranial deformation to natural genetic divergence, to something far stranger. Were these a separate race of priest-kings, a now extinct caste of oracles, or just evidence of ritual head-binding? The lack of access prevents answers, but one haunting detail persists. Eyewitnesses from the early excavations reported that certain skulls lacked the sagittal suture, the seam that joins the two parietal bones of the skull. In normal human anatomy, it's always present. Its absence suggests either a deformity or a completely different species. These skulls were quietly removed from the record, their photos archived but seldom discussed. The deeper implication that the Hypogeum may have served as more than a burial ground. It could have been a hybrid sanctuary, a place where the dead were prepared, preserved, or even studied, a proto-laboratory of soul and sound. The boundary between religion, science, and death was thinner then, and in the Hypogeum, perhaps non-existent. To lie here was an honor, but not one easily earned. The passage from life into the Hypogeum required more than just death. It required ritual, selection, maybe even sacrifice. And once placed inside, the deceased did not rest. Their remains were absorbed into the architecture, stacked within niches pressed against sacred stones. Their voices joined the chorus of echoes. Their presence never truly left. It is this lingering presence that disturbs modern visitors most. The Hypogeum is not silent, not truly. A subtle pressure builds as you descend. The walls seem to close, your thoughts scatter. You begin to feel what thousands once did, the weight of memory and the sound of bones whispering in the dark. Of all the enigmas inside the Hypogeum, the greatest lies in its lowest level, level 3. Rarely seen by the public and now sealed off due to concerns of instability and preservation, this floor is steeped in mystery. Unlike the upper chambers adorned with red ochre and intricate carvings, this subterranean tier is raw, damp, and unfinished. There are no decorations, no known burials, just silence and stone. But according to early excavation reports, level 3 may hold the key to the Hypogeum's true purpose. Sir Themistocles Zamet, the pioneering Maltese archaeologist who first documented the Hypogeum in the early 1900s, described the lowest level as containing cisterns and storage pits carved directly into the rock. These pits could hold water, suggesting either a practical function or a ritualistic one. Water, after all, was sacred to Neolithic peoples, a symbol of rebirth. In many prehistoric belief systems, death was a journey through water, into the underworld or womb of the earth. Could level 3 have been that threshold? What's even stranger is what came next. Early workers and archaeologists noted the presence of narrow passages leading even deeper than level 3. Not carved tunnels, but natural fissures. Cracks and channels that seemed to breathe cold air from unknown depths. Several reported hearing the sound of dripping water far below, yet no one could determine the source. A few brave souls attempted to crawl inside, but quickly returned, shaken, muttering about dizziness, strange acoustics, and a sense of being watched. Then there's the most controversial claim of all, that the Hypogeum once connected to an even larger system of underground tunnels extending across Malta. In 1935, an article in the National Geographic described local legends of an entire honeycomb of chambers beneath the island. One recurring tale involved a group of schoolchildren who supposedly vanished while on a guided tour of the Hypogeum, wandering too far into the lower levels. Their bodies were never found. Authorities denied the incident. But decades later, similar stories surfaced, about people hearing voices through the rock or seeing flickers of light in sealed chambers. In 1940, access to level 3 was abruptly restricted. Officials cited preservation concerns, but rumours swirled. Some believed researchers had discovered something they couldn't explain: unusual carvings, remains not human. A collapsed tunnel leading to another chamber, larger than any found before. None of these claims have been verified, but their persistence speaks to the Hypogeum's grip on the imagination. Even the architectural logic of level 3 is puzzling. Unlike the upper levels, which are symmetrical and deliberate, this lowest floor feels organic, like the builders were following something already there. An ancient cave system, a geological anomaly, or perhaps something older than human memory, repurposed by Neolithic hands. Whatever the truth, it appears the builders reached a boundary and stopped. They dug as far as they could, or as far as they dared. Modern surveys using ground-penetrating radar have revealed voids beneath and around the Hypogeum. These anomalies suggest unexplored chambers, but excavation is currently impossible without risking collapse. The structure, carved entirely into soft, Globigerina limestone, is fragile. Time and tourism have taken their toll. For now, level 3 remains a forbidden realm, a darkness beneath the darkness. Yet the stories don't end there. Local accounts speak of strange animal sounds echoing from vents near the Hypogeum, humming, drumming, even breathing, heard at night by residents living nearby. In 2011, a group of paranormal investigators claimed to have recorded EVP, electronic voice phenomena, near the sealed entrance to level 3. The recording allegedly contained whispers in an unknown language and a rhythmic pounding, like footsteps or drums. Archaeologists remain skeptical, attributing these tales to misinterpretations or natural acoustics. But when you stand at the edge of the ancient stairway leading down to level 3, you feel something shift. The air grows colder, the sound dulls, and even the bravest among us feel the pull, that primal whisper urging us deeper. What lies beyond the sealed thresholds? Lost chambers of the dead, underground temples untouched for millennia, or nothing but silence? For now, we can only wonder. Level 3 remains the Hypogeum's greatest secret, hidden beneath layers of rock, history, and fear. And perhaps that's exactly as it was intended. The Hypogeum remains an unanswered riddle, etched in stone, hidden in shadow. As we walk away from its silent halls, one truth endures. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only respected. If this ancient underground world taught us anything, it's that history whispers louder beneath the surface. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten truths and hidden worlds.